The corridor gleamed like a palace hallway. Polished marble floors, crystal lights, walls lined with framed paintings worth more than her yearly salary. The maid walked quietly, eyes lowered, carrying a silver tray with practiced balance. She had learned long ago how to move without being noticed. Invisible was safe. Then it happened. A sudden tug from behind snapped her backward. The tray slipped from her hands, plates crashing to the floor. Before she could even turn around, she heard it, the sharp, ugly sound of fabric ripping. The noise cut through the air, brutal and final. Laughter followed. The millionaire's son stood there, smirking, his fingers still clenched in the torn sleeve of her uniform. His friends leaned against the wall, amused, whispering, filming on their phones. To them, it was entertainment. To her, it was humiliation carved into memory. She froze. Her breath caught in her chest as he'd rushed to her face. Slowly, trembling hands reached up to cover the tear near her shoulder. The uniform she had carefully ironed that morning now hung unevenly, exposed, stripped of dignity. It wasn't just cloth. It was her livelihood, her protection, her last shield. "I was just joking," the boy said lightly, as if that explained everything. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She wanted to speak, to protest, to explain that she had a mother waiting at home, sick and weak, counting on her wages. That this job meant survival. But the words drowned in her throat. Around her, silence ruled. Other servants stood stiffly at the edges of the hallway, eyes fixed on the floor. They had seen this before. Power always won. Speaking up only meant losing everything. Even the guests, wealthy, well-dressed, pretended not to notice, as if cruelty were just another decoration in the house. A tear slipped down her cheek. Then another. She bent slightly, instinctively trying to pick up the broken plates, apologizing in a whisper that no one deserved. The boy laughed again, stepping back as if she were something dirty. In that moment, she felt smaller than ever. Not poor, erased. She did not know that footsteps were approaching from the entrance hall. She did not know that the house's owner had just returned. All she knew was the sound of torn fabric still ringing in her ears, and the heavy belief that no one would ever stand up for her. The heavy front doors opened with a slow, deliberate creak. The sound alone was enough to make the laughter stop. Every head turned. The air in the corridor shifted, as if the house itself had inhaled. The millionaire stepped inside, tall and composed, his coat still dusted with the chill of the evening. He had just returned from a board meeting, his mind full of numbers and negotiations, but one glance told him something was wrong. Broken porcelain scattered across the marble floor. Phones hastily lowered. A group of young men standing too close together, suddenly nervous. Then he saw her. The maid stood near the wall, shoulders hunched, one arm crossed tightly over her chest. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder, fabric dangling like a wound. Tears streaked her face, silent and uncontrolled. She wasn't crying loudly. That made it worse. He stopped walking. No one spoke. Even the crystal chandelier seemed to hum with tension. "What happened here?" he asked at last. His voice was calm, too calm. It carried authority without effort, the kind built over decades. His son shifted his weight, smirk fading as he realized this was not a moment to joke his way out of. "It's nothing," the boy said quickly. She dropped the tray. The maid flinched. Her eyes flickered toward the floor, guilt rising even though she had done nothing wrong. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Years of obedience chained her voice. The millionaire's gaze moved slowly, from the shattered plates to the torn uniform, then back to his son. He had raised him in comfort, surrounded by privilege, but this was not clumsiness. This was cruelty. He stepped closer to the maid. "Did you drop it?" he asked her, gently. Her lips trembled. She shook her head once, barely visible. The silence stretched. It was no longer empty, it was accusing. The father straightened. His jaw tightened, eyes darkening not with rage, but with something heavier, disappointment. "Everyone leave," he said quietly to the guests. No one argued. Chairs scraped softly. Footsteps retreated. The corridor emptied, leaving only the broken plates, the trembling maid, and a son who suddenly looked very small. The millionaire looked at his child, not as an heir, not as a name, but as a human being who had failed a basic test. And in that moment, the son realized something terrifying. Money could not protect him from what was coming next. The corridor felt colder now, stripped of laughter and witnesses. Only truth remained. The millionaire stood between his son and the maid, not by accident, but by choice. His presence was like a wall, firm, unmovable. He picked up one of the broken porcelain plates, turning it slowly in his hands. A thin crack ran through it. "This was expensive," he said quietly. "But it can be replaced." He let the plate fall back onto the floor. "What cannot be replaced," he continued, lifting his eyes to his son, "is dignity." The boy swallowed hard. His confidence had drained away, leaving fear in its place. "Dad, it was just a joke," he said again, softer this time. "I didn't mean anything." The millionaire shook his head. "You meant exactly what you did. You pulled, you laughed, and you watched others laugh with you." He turned to the maid. "Look at me," he said gently. Slowly, she raised her eyes. No one had ever asked her to do that before. "Not in this house. You work here," he said. "Not because you are weak, but because you are strong enough to serve with honor." His voice wavered for the first time. "And you were disrespected." He removed his tailored jacket, the fabric heavy and warm, and placed it around her shoulders with careful hands. She gasped, tears spilling freely now. The jacket smelled faintly of cedar and winter air, comfort she hadn't felt in years. Then he turned back to his son. "Kneel." The word landed like thunder. "Dad," the boy whispered, eyes wide. "Kneel," he repeated. Now, slowly, painfully, the boy dropped to his knees on the marble floor. His friends were gone. His name meant nothing here. He was just a boy facing the consequences of his actions. "Apologize," the father said. "Not to save your pride, but to learn humility." The boy's hands trembled. His voice broke. "I'm sorry," he said, looking at the floor. Then, after a pause, he looked up at the maid. "I'm truly sorry." The millionaire watched closely, tears burning behind his eyes. He had built an empire from nothing. But this was the hardest lesson he would ever teach. "Remember this moment," he said quietly. "Because respect is not inherited. It is chosen." And the maid, wrapped in that jacket, realized something had shifted forever, not just in the house, but in her heart. The house no longer felt like a palace. It felt human. The maid stood quietly, the millionaire's jacket resting on her shoulders like a shield. Her hands were still shaking, but for the first time, she wasn't trying to hide them. The marble floor beneath her knees felt less cold now, as if the weight of the moment had warmed the room itself. "You may go sit," the millionaire said softly to her. She hesitated. Servants didn't sit in this house, not unless something was terribly wrong. But his eyes were kind, steady, patient. Slowly, she lowered herself onto a nearby chair, clutching the jacket as if it might disappear. The millionaire turned back to his son, who remained kneeling, tears slipping down his face unchecked. "You will remember her name," the father said. "And every time you pass her in this house, you will look her in the eye." The boy nodded, ashamed. He had been taught many things: numbers, contracts, power, but never empathy. Now it burned into him, unforgettable. The millionaire then reached into his pocket and made a quiet phone call. His voice was calm, precise. When he hung up, he turned to the maid. "Your uniform will be replaced today," he said. "And from tomorrow, you will attend evening classes. Education should never belong only to the wealthy." Her breath caught. "Sir, I don't understand." "I do," he replied gently. "And your mother's treatment will be covered." Fully. The words shattered her restraint. She covered her face and cried, not in shame, but in relief so deep it hurt. Years of fear poured out in silent sobs. The millionaire waited. He did not rush her. Some moments must be honored. When she finally looked up, the room had changed again. The other staff stood in the doorway, watching with wet eyes. Even they felt it, the shift in the house's soul. A line had been drawn. Cruelty would no longer hide behind wealth. The millionaire helped his son to his feet. "You will earn forgiveness," he said quietly. "Not today, but someday." As the maid walked toward the staff corridor, wrapped in dignity instead of fear, something remarkable happened. People bowed their heads, not because she was above them, but because they finally saw her. That night, tears were shed in the mansion. But for the first time, they were tears of healing, not pain.